Hey, we have to record this real quick. Did you guys ever play Chex Quest?
No.
What's that? But they designed a video game, right?
Yeah, this was a video game. It was
a video game for cereal?
It was a mod of Doom, and it came on a CD-ROM.
What?
With Chex, and it was free. And it was Doom.
Wait,
it was like Doom 2 or something. It was It was so good. It was Doom.
Did you get a bag of Chex with the thing, or was it just the CD?
It's like you buy the cereal, and the CD's in there like as the prize that comes like in your prize. Cereal. Yeah.
And it was a video game?
It was a Doom mod. And it was like... It was Doom. It was like you were playing Doom. It was great. It was so great.
What were you shooting? What were you trying to kill?
You're in space, and you play like a Chex policeman, and you have like a...
Wait, what the fuck does that mean? A Chex policeman? You were made out of Chex?
You're like... He's like part of like the Space Corps, like Donald Trump's Space Corps, but he looks like a giant Chex with like blue arms and legs, and it's like the Chex is like his gold armor.
Oh my God.
That's not the bad guy of the
like it's like 40K,
story?
like Space Marines or whatever. He's got like a huge armored suit, but it kind of looks blocky like Chex, and his little head's like in there. And you had like different weapons, and they shot like green lasers, kind of. Okay. And it said like you like teleported them to jail or something, and you fought the Phlegmoids, which were like snot monsters that would like spit green goo at you.
Wait, hold on. Thematically, is Chex supposed to be good for phlegm? Is that a thing that
I don't know. Is that a thing
that we're to have understood about the cereal Chex?
Yeah, I mean, they were like they just needed to convert like Doom demons into like something, and they were like, I guess they're just slime monsters. Like this is hard. Okay. It's Chex. There's not a lot of backstory to Chex to draw from.
I was going to say, I think we're searching
like,
too deep for meaning from the video game you get in the cereal box.
It's not like Count Chocula where there's a rich backstory.
The entire like Count Chocula Frankenberry universe, like that clearly has a well-developed back canon that we're just not privy to.
They murdered Fruit Brute.
But I'm super curious about this like Chex in space narrative. Like,
right.
I need something to latch onto here.
Right.
Yeah, man. Chex Quest. I think you can play it. You can play it online for free because it's so old now. But it's great. Google that shit.
We just have amazing. To make our own meaning out of it.
You are listening to the Liquid Flannel Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Chuck Williams. Joining me, but not where I'm at, is Brendan Williams. Brendan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm missing you, man.
Yeah, man. Well, you know, I'm out in the wonderful state of Missouri, actually in Kansas City, not in St. Louis. But, you know, when it comes to sporting Kansas City soccer, I can't listen to any travel advisories from the NAACP. I've got to go out there and support my team. So, you know, I'm not going to be held away. Well, and they just won the U.S. Open Cup last night, so I went to the game with my partner, and we had a great time. But nice. I'm definitely missing Omaha, and I'm looking forward to getting back there soon. So, and joining us in Arlington, Texas, is the great Matthew Hodges. Matt, how's it going, dude?
You know, it's going all right. Any week where I can come to the show and say Texas didn't do anything phenomenally stupid or embarrassing on the national stage is a good week.
We haven't been paying attention to the news very much. I'm sure if we dug deep enough, we'd find some skeletons.
You know, don't ruin this for me, Joe.
Just from this week. Okay. I won't ruin it for you. Just like I didn't ruin the soccer game last night. It was an amazing time. It was like 90 degrees at 8 o'clock at night.
Man.
I mean, they had to do heat advisory water breaks, emergency water breaks during the soccer game.
Wow.
Which you usually don't get too many of those in September.
Do they bring one of those
happy
like the orange
first day
slices
of fall.
Also?
No orange slices, but they did give a soda to the referee after the game. You know. So
I will say they do now put MLS stars on Capri Suns.
Right.
So I do love rolling to Kansas City and then, watching Graham Zusi play and then coming home and just drinking that Graham Zusi Pacific Cooler.
Oh, yeah.
Just reliving the memories.
Oh, they've got the stars on the... Okay. I thought you meant they've got them on Capri Suns, as in they're making them do a training regimen that included consumption of Capri Sun.
Right, like
and I was like,
like
man,
the Florida Gators with Gatorade or something like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They're contracted to that's the only liquid that they can drink or whatever, and they're just like, I'm so thirsty in these tiny straws.
Goalies, like, with their gloves on, trying to jab that tiny little straw in.
Like astronauts drinking Tang. Because did you guys ever think about the mechanics of that? Like, you're gonna open up a thing full of powder in space where the powder's not gonna stay in
with
the thing.
zero
Right,
gravity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, was that even, or was it just in a pre-mixed bag or whatever? You just squeeze the water in. I mean, yeah. Did you ever eat astronaut ice cream?
Yeah, that freeze-dried. It wasn't anything like ice cream, but it was kind of a nice like freeze-dried sugar wafer.
It was like it tasted like a dried out
Right.
marshmallow or something.
I've got news for you.
It was like eating a giant Lucky Charm marshmallow.
Your parents probably just scraped some freezer burn out of the freezer and dumped sugar on it and said, check this out, they eat it in space,
Yeah. Mom, I don't think ice cream is supposed to be crunchy.
Right. No, but no space ice cream at the stadium, but I do believe they had Dippin' Dots, so that's good.
That's the ice cream of the future.
That's right.
Man.
That's right.
The ice cream that Sean Spicer got into a lengthy Twitter war with about how much he hated it.
Yeah.
It's not the true ice cream of the future.
Yeah, that's what he says.
Isn't it funny how he's become a media darling now?
I mean, kind
Even
of.
though he was like one of the shittiest people ever.
I kind of feel like he was at the Emmys one time as like a joke, and...
But
I think maybe people are overreacting, but it does kind of seem like people are ready to be like, oh, funny Sean Spicer, all the hilarious lies that you told.
Right.
What a great time.
Well, there's more, according to Harvard, it's he brings more to the conversation than Chelsea Manning. So,
Oh, man. All right, let's not give away the entire show before we actually start the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. We've got some sporting news from the Midwest. The Huskers just released their athletic director. And we've got some other stuff, don't we? We've got some Baton Rouge.
Oh,
madness.
yeah, we've got some Boy Scout news, some national news,
Yep.
Donald Trump at the UN, and all this stuff going on with healthcare. Yeah, there's quite a bit.
Yeah, healthcare, defense spending, we got a lot to talk about. So
Do you remember the days when we used to struggle to think of, like, man, what are we going to talk about? Nothing happened this week,
Yeah.
Not a lot to talk about. Those days, I miss those days so much.
Yeah, I was going to say, did we ever even experience those days as a podcast? Because I feel like those days were in the pre-Trump world, so we probably just sat around watching soccer and not talking to each other. I don't know. So, well, we do have a lot to talk about this week, so without further ado, let's jump right in.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, I know it's been a while, but I figured I might as well go on and make me a video now because it might be the last one that I can make before the end of the world. Because they say that tomorrow, September 23rd, is supposed to be it. I don't know if it's whether the Lord is coming back or the world's just going to end. I don't know what it is, but I've just been hearing this buzz from all these self-proclaimed prophets talking about, the aligning the scriptures with the stars and the Jewish holidays and all this, that, and the third, to justify the end of the world or the Lord coming back, whichever the case may be. I don't know.
Let's go.
Okay, so the apocalypse is supposed to happen 33 days after something, because Jesus was 33 when he died.
Whoa. Dude, I outlived Jesus and Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's that whole 27 Club thing, but yeah, Jesus was theoretically or mythologically 33 when he died. So there's this apocalyptic prophecy that the world is going to end in a couple of days because it's 33 days after, and that's all I can remember. It just had to do with the number 33.
I came across this story on reputable news website Fox News.
What was that?
Science Edition.
FoxNewsScienceEdition.com. Oh, okay.
It's foxnews.com/science. And yeah, it has this story. Biblical prophecy claims the world will end on September 23rd, according to Christian numerologists.
We're reporting this as news, by the way.
That's right. The day after my birthday. I knew it was special. I knew it.
Oh, man. Dude, you better party like it's the end of
I'm
the
gonna party so hard that I get arrested and say, who cares, man? Jails aren't even going to be a thing anymore. And then it's like, oh.
Right.
So the world didn't end, and now I'm sitting in a jail.
Yeah, but Chuck, I mean, not to get super dark here, but like black dudes getting arrested, that's not like the best thing that usually happens in this country. So, I mean, I would hate for you to die on your birthday before the whole show with the horsemen and everybody coming around.
Right.
Especially since you're the only person on the show who's a person of faith. And, you know, that would be a real shame, I think.
I think that would be a message to everyone. I can't decipher it. You'll have to do it on your own. But speaking of the end of the world...
No, speaking of deciphering, so Brendan, what's the story here?
Yeah, the world's definitely going to end on Sunday, you guys, so get ready.
What's this theory, though? Because he traced it out from... It was 33 days after something. There was some numerological reason that he thought that the world was going to end 33 days later.
I think he just looked up and saw a Larry Bird jersey that had 33 on it and then was like, dude, that's the number. 33 from now. It's going to happen.
I mean, obviously it's not going to happen. And obviously the funniest story is that the Fox News Science channel is publishing this as real news, not as a debunking thing. You know, it's like,
well, wait a second.
Well, maybe think about it, you guys. Like, maybe the world could end on Sunday.
Hey, it's true that guy said that.
Hold on. Now, if Larry Bird slam dunked a basketball on September 23rd as a white man over the age of 50 on a regulation goal, then would you think that might be the end of the world? Because that could be a sign.
Yeah.
That seems like unholy power.
Well, assuming that Jesus the Christ was also a white man, Larry Bird has outlived him. So maybe we need to just reconfigure all of our religions.
Okay. Yeah. We should actually use, what was that group? Not Earth, Wind, and Fire. Who sang The Age of Aquarius? We got to use that. Just fuse it all into that album as a religion. So who was that guy, and should we care about him anymore there, Brendan?
No, not at all. But are you guys, speaking of basketball apocalypses, are you guys familiar with Charles Barkley's Shut Up and Jam Gaiden?
Oh, yes. I wish that I could play that game. It's only available on computer, right?
Right, because it's like a fan-made game that's like... The joke is that it's a sequel to Barkley Shut Up and Jam, which was like a bad ripoff of NBA Jam.
NBA Jam, which was amazing. And anybody our age listening to the show will know that the boom shakalaka. Boom shakalaka.
Right. He's on fire.
But basically, so this is like a fan-made like RPG game that opens in 2041, and it's like 12 years ago. Charles Barkley performed a chaos dunk at the NBA Finals.
Wait, chaos dunk? Is this part of the Sonic the Hedgehog universe?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. It's all in. It all ties in there, man.
All inclusive.
It's like Tommy Westphal. Right. So it's like he caused like an apocalypse, and it's like they banned basketball because if you're so good at basketball, like it ties into Space Jam too, because in Space Jam, when you're so good at basketball, you get superpowers, basically. Mm-hmm. And so it was like Watchmen, but like basketball. It's amazing. I mean, I can't wait for HBO to get the rights to the series.
That's so good. And if HBO does get those rights, I want them to explicitly make the connections between NBA Jam and Space Jam and bring them all into one unified universe.
It only makes sense.
Man.
I mean, they've been working on the new Space Jam reboot with LeBron. It's been kind of stuck in development hell for a long time.
Yeah,
so I think this is the hook they need to get it.
At
back
a certain
going.
point, you got to ditch the longer they put it off, the less relevant LeBron's going to be, right? I mean, they could get Steph Curry to be the new the new hero of the story.
You forget that. I mean, Space Jam. Have you watched Space Jam recently?
Oh, fuck no way.
Dude, so check this out. So I was like, kids, we should watch Space Jam. And Owen goes, "Oh, I've already seen it." And I was like, "What? How have you seen Space Jam?" And he goes, "Oh no, they let us watch it at school. They showed it to us at school."
Okay.
But it's like, what kind of school day? I mean, we used to watch Lion King and stuff,
sure.
But I mean, space. It's so old too. It's just such a strange thing. But the first third of that movie is about freaking baseball,
right?
Because Jordan was playing for AAA baseball,
yeah.
Tim Tebow style at the time, and being terrible about it. And it's about how terrible he is at baseball,
right? And then
he plays golf. It's crazy.
And then the universe is like, but we need you to fight these basketball playing aliens to save the world or some shit,
Yeah, and also Bugs Bunny has to be there.
I don't even necessarily remember if the movie was bad or not. I just remember in high school working at Papio Fun Park and having to run the laser tag station, and they made us play the Space Jam soundtrack for that. And I was like, man, this sucks so hard that I just started playing The Color and the Shape by the Foo Fighters until they put me on go-kart duty.
Here's what actually...
That soundtrack is killer. What's wrong with you, Chuck?
Here's what actually pisses me off. Here's what actually pisses me off about Space Jam is that I had always assumed that Bugs Bunny was at least bisexual, if not gay. And then they...
Well, I mean, he's cross-dressing. I mean, he's...
Right, and I'm not going to say that cross-dressing necessarily indicates anything about your sexuality in terms of who you're attracted to, but
Eddie Izzard.
He also, I don't know, he always carried himself in such a way that I kind of always assumed that Bugs Bunny was gay, but then Space Jam made it, I guess, canonical that he is straight because they introduced the super hot Chola Bunny.
I mean, weren't there other cartoons where Bugs Bunny was doing the heart pound out of your chest, your eyes turn into hearts things, and seeing
none that I can think of, actually.
No? It seems like that happened before. But
he was dressing like a woman to seduce other men way more often than that happened.
Do you remember that Bugs Bunny was the mascot of the New York Cosmos soccer team back in the day? Because the team was owned by Warner. And so they were able to get the licensing for
that's Bunny. Wild.
Yeah, that was back in the 70s and 80s, man. It was crazy. But, they were packing in the stands, man. There was 80,000 people going to those games, going to soccer back then.
Probably just there to see the Bugs Bunny stuff.
Right. They're like, I want to hear what this Pele situation's all about, but I also want to see Bugs because my family, they love Bugs.
It's like going to Six Flags and you can have your picture taken with Daffy Duck or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, speaking of full stadiums, in an attempt to keep the stadiums full in Nebraska, of course we're recording this episode on Thursday. They just fired the athletic director, Sean Eichhorst, from the University of Nebraska. And that comes almost a week after what many people have viewed as an apocalyptic loss for the Huskers against Northern Illinois. Now,
which is a team that they literally paid money
to come
play against.
Yeah.
To theoretically stomp into the ground and be show how this is how great we are. We won so good.
Wait,
it's if everything went
they paid money to play against this team this time, and they still got beat.
So this is what happens: is each season teams try to schedule. You've got your regular conference games, but then you also try to schedule a somewhat challenging non-conference. But also, if you're a good team, you're scheduling a non-conference that warms you up for the conference.
Right.
So if you're in a power conference, you're going to schedule a bunch of scrub teams to play so that you can get your players warmed up with competition and still win and be in title hunt.
Sure.
Well, now Nebraska, I think it's a mixture of they're not that good in the sense that they can't just stomp over teams the way they used to.
They're not that good in the
also,
sense that they can't seem to win a goddamn game.
Yeah,
well,
they can't win the damn football.
Totally. But, you know, the other thing is they also can't schedule either. I mean, the first game of the year, Brendan, you went to that game with me, or I went with you, and it was like they were playing Arkansas State, and it was a close game all the way through, and fans were just irate. They're like, if we can't do better against Arkansas State, and then it's like, oh, Arkansas State won their conference last year. So why the hell are you even scheduling them as your first game of the season? You know?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure that these games get scheduled out further in advance than that. But yes, this totally was a situation where they paid this team to come in as a warm-up, and then they lost that warm-up match.
Man.
It's pure hubris, man.
And the conference that, you know, Northern Illinois comes from is a very historic quarterback conference, so they definitely have offensive firepower, but it's just not one of those power conferences. The thing that gets me about all of this is all the Husker fans that pretend when you start talking about whether kids should be allowed to market their license their own image rights and stuff like that in college, and people are like, no. They're students first. They're students, then athletes. They'll be athletes when they graduate or when they leave, when we're done using them.
Right.
But right now they're students. And it's like, okay, well, if they're students, then it shouldn't matter whether they win or lose, just whether they're developing themselves. But it clearly matters whether they win or lose because their athletic director just got fired and it was entirely about performance.
Well, totally.
So,
and, you know, part of that is also like, look, not all of these kids who play football during college are going to get drafted into the NFL.
Of course not. Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
So if they're hot shit right now and they have the opportunity to like make a fortune, this is the thing that people treat them as valuable for. You know, it's not that they're college students,
right.
It's that they're football players. So to tell these kids that you can't capitalize on this thing that maybe the thing that you're the most famous for in your entire life seems really sketchy to me.
And the craziest thing to me is just the fact that you're making so much money for the university. If you work at the university like bookstore or cafeteria, you get paid money to do that, right? And these people who are, you know, going to school, going to like grueling, you know, practices, early morning weightlifting sessions,
film,
you know, all this extra
absolutely.
stuff, reviews, games, travel, you know, all this stuff, but they can't get paid. Not even can they not get paid, but they can't even like get a free tattoo or get an extra bowl of spaghetti or whatever.
Yes. They can't even open up their own YouTube channel and get that monetized.
Get ad revenue from Google just because it's them.
Yeah, you can't do that. Right. Well, and then
even come on our podcast and get all our sweet podcast cash.
Well, and all these Husker quote unquote fans out here are like, well, they're getting an education and that's valuable. And I'm like, okay, you must be thinking about that mythical pre-9/11 college education where things, you know, were a little bit less globalized or something like that. But yeah, that education, you can find kids working at Dairy Queen with a bachelor's degree.
Yeah,
you know?
well, it's that, and it's also, if you've ever been to a college that had any kind of a football program, you know what classes these guys are taking. It's not a criticism of them, but they do get shunted into
communications.
It's stuff like the value of Crayola crayons to Business 101 or whatever. I mean, it's these total bullshit classes that you can't even say that they're getting. You can't even say that they're getting a solid college education because the college knows why they're there. They're going to put them in places where they can. Rocks for jocks is a stereotype for a reason, you know?
Geology. Yeah, totally. It's yeah.
Well, and then you've got players who there was that whole scandal where they were like, according to your transcript, you took Swahili for 6 years or something like that.
Oh, at North Carolina.
yeah, could you say a sentence to me in Swahili? And they're like,
yeah.
Yeah, dude, no. They probably start doing that tongue click bullshit and stuff.
Well, half the damn classes are taught by the coaches and the, various athletic trainers and
tutors and stuff, yeah.
I mean, they end up taking, they take like a life science course from the gal who also, brings them Gatorade at the end of a quarter or whatever.
Right. And let's not get this confused. I mean, Northwestern University's football team versus, maybe some of the rest of the teams in the Big Ten. They've got, engineers and biology majors and chemists and stuff on their team. That's the team that tried to unionize Division I athletics anyway, right. NCAA athletics. So, you've got them, but then you've got guys, then you've got the rest of them. And if you're not going to be a professional like the rest of them, there needs to be some sort of a change in how this is going, because you're right. They're shuffling you into a degree, not because they think that that's the degree that you have the best aptitude for, right. but the degree that will keep you eligible to keep their team winning. And that's 100%
absolutely
disingenuous bullshit.
Yeah, and I want
by anyone that cares about education.
And I want to be 100% super clear here. I am not criticizing the player/students. This has absolutely to do with the really weird incentive system. This has to do with the really weird incentive system for the universities, where the football program ends up funding a bunch of other real academia they do. And it has to do with how messed up the NCAA is on the fact that, like, everyone knows that this is the case, and we still don't let these guys make money off of their likeness or make media appearances or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, we could do...
Well, except...
Go ahead.
They'll make media appearances for the NCAA.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they'll be in the commercial showing their face, but if they try to show their face or, like, get paid to do an autograph or something... doesn't fly. But if you're doing it for the NCAA and they're raking in the cash,
right? And I've got to bring this up too, because I think there's a discussion that doesn't happen enough around football, which is we're taking a bunch of guys who are probably bell curve bright. There are probably some not so bright guys, and there are probably some super bright guys, and pretty much everyone else is normal in there, who are going out and performing a sport that we know causes terrible brain damage and like degenerative neurological disease.
Irreparable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, right. They had, God, who was that guy? That Patriots, Aaron Hernandez or whatever?
Oh, yeah. The murderer.
Who was straight up murdering dudes. They released today that, like, his post-mortem autopsy, because he, like, killed himself in prison, they were like, oh, yeah, he had, like, severe brain trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, and then...
almost everybody does.
Right.
Who plays in the NFL.
Exactly. And then you wonder, like, when they behave in bizarre ways, it's like, well, is part of it this institutionalized system that they're in terms of making money for the university?
The institutionalized system to make money for the university that, by the way, involves smacking your head into other guys' heads, like, on a daily basis for a several-year time span. Yeah, I could see how that might play a role.
Was it Teddy Roosevelt or was it Garfield that tried to abolish football in the United States? One of them did, and... Garfield
just hates Mondays, man. He didn't hate football.
Right. As long as you're serving up some lasagna in the concession stand. I want to believe, keep Odie away.
I actually want to believe that it was Andrew Garfield, because that would be the only thing that I know about Andrew Garfield other than his name.
Right. Other than his absurdly comical name.
Right.
Well, I think that might be a good place to take a break. Honestly, we could do an entire podcast about the NCAA.
And we probably will at some point.
Fucked up it is. I think we will. We'll do a spin-off series for sure. Do a series, NCAA assholes or something.
Yeah, sure.
Anyways.
Yeah, we'll do a Liquid Flannel spin-off show.
Excellent. So yeah, maybe we take a break, and then what should we jump into next? Maybe some Baton Rouge or some Eagle Scout, or no, that's the same
Baton
thing.
Rouge, okay. National News, anything else that rhymes with moose, basically.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners when somebody disrespects our flag?
Head fake.
to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now. Out. He's fired.
He's on fire!
He's fired!
He's on fire!
You know, some owner's going to do that. He's going to say, that guy that disrespects our flag, he's fired.
No good!
And that owner, they don't know it. They don't know it. They're friends of mine, many of them.
Foul!
They don't know. They'll be the most popular person for a week. They'll be the most popular person in this country because that's a total disrespect of our heritage. That's a total disrespect of everything that we stand for, okay? Everything that we stand for. And I know we have freedoms and we have freedom of choice and many, many different freedoms. But you know what? It's still totally disrespectful. Now, North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do.
So I know that we had mentioned Baton Rouge here before the break, but all right, we got to talk about the UN here. We got to talk about Trump and the antics that can only be described as Trumpian, but more importantly, the reaction from the world community, in particular North Korea.
Well, I first want to say I did love how Trump's opening remarks at the UN, within the first sentence out of his mouth, he can't resist being like, the UN's an okay building in Manhattan, but if you want to look at a really gray building, go a couple blocks down.
Oh my God.
He's like, I think the UN wanted to build here because, they saw how great Trump Tower was and they were like, we got to get in on a piece of this action right here.
Yikes.
Oh, man.
I mean, that goes straight back to those comments that were going around this week. His first recorded comments after the 9/11 attacks back in 2001. And the first, 45 seconds is him talking about, well, it used to be that the World Trade Center was the tallest buildings, but now it turns out Trump Tower is the tallest building. Anyway, we were all really heartbroken about what happened.
If I was in charge...
Yeah, look on the bright side, though.
That would immediately trigger an investigation into Trump. If you were second banana and now you're number one after a horrible accident...
Yeah.
That calls for investigation. So
Bush did 9/11 conspiracies is so old. It's time for Trump did 9/11 conspiracies to get started. All right,
we got it. This is the
let's flip the script.
Liquid Flannel, as a matter of policy now, says that Trump did 9/11.
You heard it here first.
So that he could have the tallest building in Manhattan. He was just jealous of the tallness.
Bush was a patsy for Donald Trump, who apparently was playing a really long-ass game to get himself into power.
87th dimensional Barkley shut up and jam game. This guy's playing on another level.
Yeah, no kidding. You can't match that game. you got to tie your Reebok pumps up tight for that shit. But yeah.
Sadly, him bragging about how he had a better building than the UN building, actually one of the better things that he said.
Right.
Because then he just went off in his big speech where he doubled down on calling Kim Jong-un from North Korea Rocket Man.
Yes. Rocket Man, which he did on Twitter, and on Twitter it came off as lame, but it was oh, that's just him on Twitter. But then for him to repeat that in front of the UN as if, professional, accomplished people who do serious work, we're going to think that was cool.
Right. Right.
It is cool. That's a cool name. It's not even a slam.
Rocket Man's a cool name. Well, but if you're meaning it derogatory, then that's not great. You know, I mean,
it makes me wonder if Donald Trump just doesn't like Elton John, which would just be another reason that I don't like Donald Trump.
I mean, I almost think it's kind of like a game recognized game thing where Donald Trump is like throwing that out and being like, look, man, I'm recognized. I love branding. My branding is deals and winning. Your branding is nuclear missiles and rockets. Like, yeah, like let's put it all out there. You know what I mean?
He only understands the world in trademarks and like famous people.
Well, I heard that a lot of the speech gravitated towards the America first, and you should put your own countries before everyone else sort of thing, too.
Which is the perfect message for the United Nations.
Yeah, we're united in self-interest.
Literally, the reason that whole body exists is because that didn't work.
Right. And he shouted out in his speech, he was like, also, the UN is great. I love the Marshall Plan, which is the thing that they did, which was like the post-World War II reconstruction and the formation of the UN, basically. You can't love that, but then also love
defunding infrastructure.
Like nationalism and blind patriotism and jingoism and like all this. Like those are incompatible.
Well, it's kind of like when we were joking earlier about Trump and not knowing that Namibia is not a country, or probably confusing Namibia, Zambia, and Gambia.
Right.
But if he was talking about...
It's just the country that's like in between, right? It's just the one that's like right in the middle.
It's just one of those black country. They do blackface, but it's actually their skin or something. But if he's talking about Namibia has universal health care. And he's talking about how whichever country this is has better health care even than us. This is the second time. It was like when he did it with Australia. He keeps shouting out these people that have better systems than us and then refusing anybody that wants to create those systems in the United States. So, but then, you know, not to overshadow the coup de grace in the UN was him talking about having to annihilate North Korea, possibly, until they got rid of their nukes. So
he said his goal was a fully denuclearized North Korea, which is just not even a realistic starting point for any discussion at all. Everyone knows that is impossible.
I mean, it's impossible. Even if they're just using conventional weapons, there's no way to do anything to North Korea, because basically what you're doing at that point is saying like, well, the 100,000 or so people who live in Seoul are just dead at that point.
Collateral damage, you know.
Oh, I think it's way more people than that. At the same time, this is where people say like, oh, you know, whatever. Trump just says nonsense. Everybody knows that it doesn't even matter and you should just ignore it. Even other world leaders recognize that to some extent. Except in this case, he's attacking the Iran deal at the same time. Going to the UN saying, like, it was one of the worst deals ever. I should pull out of it. I'm still thinking about it. You know, I might pull out of it. And the Iran deal is literally the only, like, that's his dream scenario for North Korea, right?
Right.
Is a deal like the Iran deal. But at the same time, all these countries work together, including Russia, including France, all these countries work together on this Iran deal for years and years and years. And Trump just wants to tear it up the minute he gets into office, just for no reason other than he just doesn't like it. But so why would North Korea then say, yeah, good call, we trust you, like, we'll give up our nukes, let's normalize relations or whatever, let's get the sanctions off.
You're really doing right by Iran, so we're going to do the same.
right, exactly. And it's like, it matters a lot that his rhetoric is saying this, because he's putting himself in an impossible position with all his rhetoric on North Korea. And they know that if they get rid of nukes, they'll be immediately invaded. I mean, they know that.
Yeah.
And they know that Trump's word means absolutely nothing. So there's no deal-making incentive for them at all.
I'm going to do a live fact check. In terms of the population of Seoul, South Korea, I was only off by 2 orders of magnitude. Okay. There are There are about 10 million people who live in Seoul, South Korea.
Yeah.
What I was thinking of, though, was
Manhattan, Kansas.
No. What I was thinking of was the estimates for how many people would die in about the first 10 minutes of war with North Korea in Seoul, which is something like 100,000 people in the first 10 minutes.
Nailed it.
For sure.
So I was actually on point there, and now I'm sad because these numbers are fucking horrifying.
Well, Brendan, did you have some good quotes from the Kim Jong-un rocket man himself?
So back to the rap battle that's happening between Trump and North Korea.
Oh, this is going to be an epic rap battle of history. You know that those guys are like on it, writing it right now.
So here's some snippets of Kim Jong-un's official response. Is uncharacteristically written in first person as like Kim Jong-un's diary, basically. So, shaping the general idea of what he would say, I expected he would make stereotyped prepared remarks a little different from what he used to utter in his office or on the spur of the moment as he had to speak on the world's biggest stage. But far from making remarks of any persuasive power that can be viewed to be helpful to diffusing tensions, he made unprecedented rude nonsense one has never heard from any of his predecessors. A frightened dog barks louder.
Is it weird to say that Kim Jong-un is growing on me here, like as a friend or something? Like
Kim Jong-un is clearly the better speechwriter, or whoever he has working for him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Trump's UN speech was written by Stephen Miller. And that guy is literally human trash. I can think of no worse person right now.
Well, and even if you take the speech writers out of the equation, Kim Jong-un is way better on staying on message than Donald Trump is, staying on script, so.
Yeah, because they have a coherent narrative. I mean, it could be a really horrible one, but at least it's coherent.
Well, and it's amazing because his remarks are already being translated from another language. So they kind of start with a handicap, and they're still far more eloquent than anything Trump has ever said in his entire life. Basically, Trump is playing right into the ridiculous caricature of America that North Korea has propagandized for decades now, right? Saying they're just a big bully. They want to destroy us. They want to destroy everyone just for no reason. Like, we're just pure trying to exist, and they want to kill us for no reason. And before, people were like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, how could they even possibly believe
Hyperbole.
that? But now you've got Trump going to the UN saying, like, we will wipe them off the map without a second thought. And they're like, yeah, see, this is what we've been saying the whole time, you guys.
Exactly. You got to love the perpetuation of stereotypes.
So he closes it out. This is a great line. Whatever Trump might have expected, he will face results far beyond his expectations. I will surely and definitely tame the mentally deranged U.S. dotard with fire. He uses the word daughter, which means a senile old man, which is amazing.
Their vocabulary is pretty legit out there for sure.
It's a super slam when you're rap battle, when your opponent has to look up words in the dictionary.
Right. Dude, with microphone drop and stuff.
Oh, like Donald Trump's ever going to read any of that. Somebody else is going to report to him, like, Kim Jong-un said something nasty about you. We're not even going to, waste your time with it.
It was pretty great, though. You should read it.
Even that final phrase that could be deemed as a threat or whatever, there still was truth in it, in the sense that they said, whatever Trump's expectation was, it's going to be exceeded. And it's like, well, duh. I mean, who knew climate change could be tough? Who knew immigration could be tough? Who knew nuclear war... Who knew bluffing on nuclear war could be so difficult, honestly, So.
The guy who spent zero time after he got elected doing what every other president's ever done, which is, you go to college every day for 12 hours just to try to get up to speed on stuff, apparently what they were doing was setting up meetings to, figure out, licensing agreements now that they were going to be in power.
Well, Trump's idea of educating himself is he's like, I just need to watch as much Fox News as possible right now. I need to TiVo Fox News, watch it, and skip the commercials, because that's how efficient I'm going to be learning international politics right here.
That's productive.
Building on that premise, then, we've named it on the show before. How hard do you think Trump is going to come out in favor of or against this Graham Cassidy healthcare amendment?
He's already coming out in favor of it.
But what if it turns against him? Because we've seen this before.
It's a tough call. It seems like it could pass, but it also seems like no one wants it to pass. So
right.
I'm almost holding out hope that it'll just come down to the wire, and they only really need 2 votes or whatever. So it's possible that 2 people can get the balls to just say, like, this is a bad idea.
Well, Lisa Murkowski is already saying that she's already explained why she voted no against the other ones, and that's basically going to be her vote here if things haven't changed. So,
I mean, to be super clear for anyone who's listening who hasn't been following it, we're recording this on September the 21st, Thursday night.
They're not voting this weekend.
So things probably have changed by the time that you're listening to this, but as it stands right now, essentially what the Graham Cassidy amendment to the ACA does is all of the same nasty shit that was in the AHCA or the most recent Obamacare repeal process that they tried to do, which I can't even remember what it's called at this point. But it's the same kind of thing where it basically defunds Medicaid, gets the states the ability to let their insurance companies say, like,
no
pre-existing conditions, like, yeah, sure, we'll charge you. Now if you've got metastatic cancer, it's going to be like $160,000 a year instead of whatever a reasonable insurance arrangement was. So it's basically the exact same thing.
Well, I've got 2 Donald Trump tweets that may shed a little light on this here. So
okay.
The first one: I would not sign Graham Cassidy if it did not include coverage of pre-existing conditions. It does.
Right.
It does. A great bill, repeal and replace. And then the next one was Senator, and then in parentheses, Dr. Bill Cassidy is a class act who really cares about people and their health care. He doesn't lie, just wants to help people.
Which are 2 of the most ridiculous, easily disprovable lies, because this bill does absolutely nothing to protect pre-existing conditions. It just leaves it up to the states. And if a state doesn't want to do it, then they don't have to do it.
On that one, I'm gonna call you out, Brennan, because he's not actually lying. What he is doing is leaving out important context. Insurance companies would still be prohibited from kicking someone from coverage for pre-existing conditions. However, it would put them into these ridiculous high-risk pools, or are there even pools in this one? I think it might just be...
I mean, it's up to the states, whatever they want to do.
Yeah, whatever the states want to do. The insurance companies could jack up your coverage to an exorbitant amount that amounts to a death sentence. But was the president lying when he said that if you have insurance with a pre-existing condition, you won't be able to get kicked off your plan for a pre-existing
He's following
condition?
the letter of the law, but not the spirit of it. And it's that legal bullshit that you can smell from a mile away. That's what it comes down to.
But he doesn't even care.
Oh, yeah, you know that he doesn't fucking know anything about that.
He'll twist his words any way he can.
Sure.
But, yeah, he doesn't know or care the details of the bill. And neither does anybody else. Neither do the people, Graham and Cassidy, who wrote this bill. They don't care what it does.
Right.
If they cared, they wouldn't be trying to do it before the end of the month for some arbitrary nonsense budgetary reasons. They do it through regular order.
The reason is at the end of the month, they can no longer amend bills that happened under the last administration under the budget reconciliation process. That's why we've had so much healthcare stuff going on for the past couple of months.
There's a deadline.
This deadline is coming up. They can't get the votes right now. They certainly won't be able to get the votes when it goes to like 60 votes instead of 50.
But they could also just there's so many things they could do. They can just wait till the next budgetary cycle, which at this point it's already freaking September. It's only months away, right? When the next year starts and they can redo the budget again. Or they could get rid of the 60 vote threshold, get rid of the filibuster, and just go to 50-50, which Trump has said and which they could also do. So for them to just say, well, we have to do it this way. They don't have to do it this way. This is the way they're choosing to do it.
Oh, it's just way easier for them to do it this way.
Right. It's ridiculous that they're trying to squeeze it under the wire. They won't get a CBO score. Deb Fisher at a town hall in Omaha said, I don't vote. I don't want to vote on anything without a full CBO score. I don't want to even
want to
take a position on something without a full CBO score.
Again,
sure.
But she's going to vote for this.
She's like, I don't want to, but I sure as hell will do it. I'm still going to follow my team.
I mean, and people have been saying, like, call your congressman. And I'm thinking about my senators are Cornyn and Cruz. And yours are Sass and Fisher, who never even comes up on this show because boringly predictable.
You still have to call. I mean, it's stupid, but you still have to call and say, like, I don't like that you're doing this. They're going to vote for it anyway.
It's on record.
It's better that they vote for it against, like, knowing that it's wrong rather than saying, like, well, I didn't hear any. I didn't hear a lot of people. But in some ways, clearly, if they repeal Obamacare or they pass this new thing and they leave it all back to the states, it would be a gigantic cluster. It wouldn't help sick people at all. But it almost would be a motivating force for the opposition versus if they fail again, it's harder to get motivated to go out and vote. They're almost shooting themselves in the foot again by passing something like this that they know is terrible and people are going to hate.
Well, that's the big gamble that a bunch of progressives are taking, which is, I mean, it's basically accelerationism, right? Where you're talking about the system needs to get this bad in order to have a positive change, like further down the road from what we actually had to begin with. And the thing about it is a gamble because, I mean, what if a bunch of people are just too fucking broke at that point to, like, take to the streets or be able to take time off work to organize or anything like that? I mean, at a certain point, you can beat down a population so badly
that they just accept whatever.
And they can't organize to change things the other direction.
Yeah. It's funny, too, because you can kind of see it both ways with Trump now trying to kind of make this pivot where he's like, I'm the centrist, nonpartisan deal maker now. You could easily see him doing what Chuck was saying earlier, which is like, as soon as this bill fails, Trump is going to say like, yeah, that's what I told him to do that because I care about you. I'm bipartisan. I protected Obamacare. He's so able to just change his mind on a whim that you almost can't hold him to anything that happens because he'll just say like, well, it wasn't my fault.
I think primarily the guy's an opportunist. He clearly has been very successful at that, right? Because he was elected to the highest office in the world, I guess.
Well, how about we take a break here and then come back and we can maybe get into some crazy Boy Scout homicide or something. Or maybe we could just find a high note. We'll leave you guessing here and we'll come right back.
They gave me a list of 10 people that were absolute no's. These are 10 Republican senators. Now, John McCain was not on the list, so that was a totally unexpected thing. Terrible. Honestly, terrible. I call up the different people. Well, Mr. President, could you have dinner with my wife, myself, my family, my kids, my cousins, my uncles? And I'd like to talk to you about it. Okay. So they come over, the family, pictures all night, everything. Okay. And I'll get a vote or I won't, whatever. But brutal. You know what that is, folks, right? It's called brutality.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right.
All right, Matthew McConaughey on the show here. It was great today watching Milo do his reenactment of Baked Alaska on Twitter. So, or not on Twitter.
I love so much that these guys are starting to fight with each other and like mock each other for various media performances. That
I mean, the whole new like Trump has like brought out like a preening narcissist version of right-wing politics that I think can only be counteracted on the left by sassy drag queens.
Right. Well, isn't that Milo anyways? I mean, he's a sassy drag queen.
He's almost there, right? I mean, that's how that you got to fight fire with fire.
He wears more makeup.
Milo's a Quisling, though. He works to the wrong side.
Right, but he does wear more makeup than I've ever seen a drag queen wear. So I don't know what to do with that information. I can just say that I'm feeling a little bit weird on the inside for saying that I found something Milo did mildly amusing and pleasing, and then also saying, hey, Kim Jong-un made some good points. It's like, what's wrong with this world, But, well, we can deal with it. So. Well,
that's what happens, man. That's when your government is so ridiculous and backwards. And, I mean, this happened during the Bush administration, too, where, Bush would do all these crazy things. And then
he would say the most ridiculous shit in the media.
Right. And then like Al-Qaeda would put out a statement and be like, that's ridiculous. And you're like, well, yeah, you're like, well, I hate Al-Qaeda, but like you nailed Bush on that one. Yeah. Like that guy's right. a moron.
Way to take him to task. You know? So, yeah.
But we got to bring it low before we bring it high. So we promised Baton Rouge.
All right.
So let's hit it real quick.
Yeah.
This freaking Boy Scout dude. I mean, it's funny that.
Now hold on. Do we want to start off that way? Do we want to say this Boy Scout dude as opposed to something like
this Eagle Scout dude?
As opposed to this like kind of loner white guy who did this thing who also happened to be a Boy Scout. Because I don't know if we want to own it like that.
No, I agree, and I think that's exactly the point, is that the coverage of this dude is immediately latching onto the fact that he was an Eagle Scout, even though he's being accused of self-radicalizing.
Who is this person, and what did he do?
So this dude, his name is Kenneth Gleason, and he was arrested in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for randomly drive-buying some black dudes who were just walking around minding their own business. So,
yeah, this alleged kind of sequence killing of black people.
And so when he killed two random black people, and the cops
allegedly. It's important that we say he allegedly has done these things.
It's true. So the accusation is that he shot these two black guys, and then the cops were like, well, we don't know that he's just shooting black guys. Maybe he's just shooting whoever he comes across,
Right.
But then he apparently attempted to attack a third person and didn't hit him, and that was, led police to be able to track him down. And so this dude gets arrested. He's wearing a Philmont Scout Camp T-shirt when he gets arrested.
Yes, right.
And mugshotted.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you guys go to Philmont?
I did, yeah.
Chuck did.
Mm-hmm. My whole family.
Yeah. Chuck, and that's the big backpacking trip, right?
It's the big backpacking trip in Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico, and I know that at least at the time they used to say that Mount Baldy, which is within the Scout Reservation, is one of the highest points in New Mexico. So, you know, my family did go on that, and for me, it was a matter of personal hell because I actually didn't want to go, and neither did my brother, but my father, who's also an Eagle Scout, insisted on it because, when he was a Boy Scout.
Had he done it before?
No, because black scouts were not allowed at Philmont Scout Reservation when he was a scout. So he's like, now you guys are doing it. And I'm like, man, we kind of just want to play basketball this summer or something. It's like, nope, you're going to go to train and go up that damn mountain. But
yeah, you're going to go to this racist place that they didn't want you to go to. Right. It's going to be great.
Right. And when we were up there, it's like, I definitely remember there being at least one outhouse where I saw a Confederate flag etched into it, and a swastika.
That's dedication.
I mean, to get all those stars, it's not just like that, but yeah, it was crazy. But like, you'd see that kind of shit out there and be like, what am I doing out here? Does my family even love me? Why am I here? But it meant a lot to my dad, and looking back on it now, it means a lot to me too, to say that I was able to overcome something like that. So,
well, not just the cultural thing, but I understand the Philmont trip to be, that's really physically taxing. You're out there for like 10 days or something.
Yep. You're out
living off of your backs.
Exactly.
In the middle of the desert. And I mean, that's a big deal. That's a real thing be able to plan for and execute and get through it on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. All your gear is on your back the entire 10 days on the trek. I believe our trek with side hikes ended up being close to 100 miles. And,
wow.
You know, and this includes your food, which I always loved carrying the food because that got lighter as the trek progressed. You know? But yeah, so that was my personal experience with Philmont. You know, it was a great place. I had no idea. I knew there were some weirdos out there, right, but I didn't know it would be like that. So
yeah, apparently this guy's just using it to like rep his like racist cred or whatever, and be like, "Yo, man, my racism, you know, is so hipster,
dude. Yeah,
you know, Philmont racism, baby,
dude. This is some around the campfire type racism right here. You know, this is."
But I mean, it's ridiculous that this dude, you know, is going out and straight up murdering people. And immediately, because he's a white dude, they're latching on to like, oh, you know, he seems like such a nice guy.
He did this construction project for his church as part of his Eagle Scout badge.
Right.
Oh, what a nice, wow, that's just crazy. Like,
right. I mean, they had to dig through like years of his social media photos to find the one where he's wearing a scout uniform. Whereas, I mean, somebody gets shot by the police in Chicago or St. Louis or something like that, they just pull, you know, the most scandalous picture they can find of something.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Even though these people are like, Philando Castile was like, he worked at like a Catholic school
Montessori,
or whatever.
A beloved lunch lady, basically.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, stuff like that. He's a legal, you know, Second Amendment gun owner. You know, they don't care. Right. But immediately they'll just find, you know, the most thug picture of him that they can possibly find and blast it all over Fox News.
And talk about how he smoked weed, which was a thing that I think the CNN article did mention about this Baton Rouge shooter.
Oh yeah, it did. Yeah.
Except it happened like 19 lines down.
Right.
You know who else smoked a ton of weed? Boy Scout dude.
Right.
You know who else smokes a ton of weed? Literally fucking everybody. And it's so telling that they only bring it up when it's like a black person who died or committed a crime.
Which is like they're literally plastering pictures of this guy in his Boy Scout uniform like all over. Like that's the picture that they're using to represent him. Although they could probably easily find a picture of him with a big old blunt in his mouth.
Oh, dude, for sure.
They found a ton of weed at his place, and they were like, oh, yeah, that dude smoked weed all the time.
Right.
Even just his mugshot, which is like the most hilarious, like, deer caught in the headlights photo I've ever seen in my entire life.
It is pretty bad. It literally has red eye on it, which is like, what camera are they using?
Yeah, seriously, is that like a freaking Polaroid or what? You know, they need to shake it like a Polaroid picture on that. But yeah, his picture looks pretty haggard for sure. You know, the thing I always love is that all of his friends are like, I had no idea. I mean, I never would have seen this happen. And that's when I want to say, did he have any black friends first? You know, because if you're a white person hanging out with another white person and only interacting in white spheres, then it's like, how could you even be able to say, I have no idea about this guy? You know, because you don't know.
You know, Chuck, I'm glad that you brought that up, because when I was reading one of these profiles of this guy talking about his deep inner life or whatever, all the friends are saying, like, I never knew him to, like, speak up about too much. Usually when I saw him, he was reading, like, a book on philosophy or something. Mm-hmm. But none of them said anything about, I spent a lot of time with this guy. And I'm going to go out on a shaky limb here and say, I bet that all of the time that this guy wasn't hanging out with these people who claim to know him so well, he was on places like 4chan and Reddit and talking about how awful intercultural values are and how the social justice warriors are ruining everything. It's just a matter of time before somebody traces back. You know, they'll find his Reddit nickname and they'll find out that he was subscribed to all the usual fucking suspects. And I'm not even going to say what they are, because we've talked about that enough.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny because there's that racist guy that's a biochem major over at UNL that people have been tracking, and I mean, not just me. He's public enemy number one on the hit list for the Anti-Defamation League. He's on there,
right?
And he's, you know, on the radar for Antifa and other groups. the guy that spoke at that city council meeting, this dude literally has pictures of himself, like selfie pictures, where it's just him. It's a tripod taking the picture Dylan Roof style, and then he's got a gun in his pants, like down his waistband. And it's like, you know, and
yeah, that's never a red flag for
and online
behavior.
talking about committing Turner Diaries style revenge against people and stuff like that.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So, and I guarantee you, when something happens with this dude, everyone's gonna be like, dude, I had no idea. I mean, I had
no idea this was happening.
Right. Someone even told me, they're like, yeah, people have told me that he even had black friends before. And it's like, what? You know, so yeah, these kind of things.
And it's funny too, because like when shootings and stuff happen, all these people say things like, oh my gosh, like if only we had known or whatever, you know, if only, you know, someone had been able to tell anyone or whatever. And it's like, you can go to the cops right now and be like, dude, there's this racist Nazi who like posts online that he has a gun and he hates Jews.
Right.
And they're like, well, you know, free speech.
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to do? He is white, right? I mean, how white is this dude, right? Pretty white? Okay, yeah, that's
right.
Yeah,
like,
pretty white. No, that's free speech.
Come back when it's a real problem, like after he makes that free speech transcend to something a little bit more tangible, you know?
Right.
Yeah. It's fucking crazy. But then it's like, what? Even this was this week too. This week feels like it's been going on forever. That Nazi got punched out in Oregon or some shit, or in Seattle, and everyone on
in Seattle,
and everyone on the left is like, or well, lots of people on the left are fighting about whether that's okay or not. And it's like, you know what? The generation before us,
hold on. Let's characterize that correctly. There are a whole bunch of people who are liberals and a whole bunch of people who are on the left who are fighting about whether or not that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. It's 100%. That's the debate right there. And it's like, you know, if you're a liberal and you're over the age of, you know, 55, then your generation, or maybe not 55, let's go with 65. Your generation already had its opportunity to deal with this kind of shit and
literally punched out the Nazis as much as possible.
Yeah, you had that chance to deal with it, and then people after you just kind of let it kind of bake up. Well, now you need to sit down and let us deal with it the way we need to deal with it. Right. So, and that's complete eradication.
It exposes the whole thing of like, it's all about patriotism and it's all about, you know, what's best for America or whatever.
Well, it's also about this like idea of American politics as being this really civil discussion of ideas or something like that.
Right.
But you've got the party of anti-communism immediately just being like, oh, the Russians like hacked our election and like helped our reality TV candidate win. Like, that's fine. Like, not a big deal, like at all. Like, oh, Nazis want to vote for us? Like, hey, maybe Nazis aren't so bad.
You know what's funny is the anti-communist wing of that party simultaneously doesn't like Russia because they're communist, which they're not, and they like Russia because they're doing things that are helping them, which they totally are.
Right.
So, like, the anti-communism doesn't actually enter the argument.
Right.
Russia's not communist. China's not communist.
Right.
You know, people want to bring up, you know, they want to attack the DSA for, you know, socialism's working out real well in China, isn't it?
Right.
It's like, well, I mean, China's not socialist. Like, it's clearly not socialist.
Right. Like, they're doing all right, you know.
Right, and they're doing well.
Right.
Hey, you know what? Here's a high note. Donald Glover won an Emmy for Atlanta, and that shit was great. He was the first black person to ever win an Emmy for directing.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, and we've talked about him on the show before.
He's the first black person ever to win an Emmy for directing?
Yeah, I think so. Or maybe
Jesus
directing a comedy? I don't know.
Yeah, let's try to niche it as much as possible to stave off Matt's shock, his utter shock. Right.
I'm sorry. I just got really pissed off about that whole thought.
No, Matt, you should watch Atlanta. You would love it.
Oh, no, I know that I would. I love Donald Glover. I just haven't had the chance to get around to it yet.
Well, so should that just be the high note? Say that shit again.
Yeah, everybody watch the Emmy Award-winning television show starring Donald Glover, Atlanta.
Starring Donald Glover, who's a fucking genius.
Starring and directed by, right?
Show.
I mean... Did he direct it?
Yeah, directed, written, created, produced. Showrunner. I mean, yeah, he's all over that thing.
Yeah, definitely, everyone. We've told you to watch Atlanta before, but if you haven't, get on that shit right now. I mean, it's
only like 8 I mean, it's so short.
Right.
Like, you can literally watch it in a day.
Yeah, if you're dedicated. So,
and it's kind of like it kind of time skips around. Like, each episode, you can watch an episode by itself, and you get more out of it if you watch it all together. But it's not like one ends and like the next set. It's like an indeterminate, dreamlike amount of time happens between each episode. It seems like.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's really good. Was there any other? I didn't even watch the Emmys, so I'm not sure if there were any other points of interest from it. But
yeah, I mean, nobody did. Donald Trump tweeted about how the ratings were way, way down.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But none of the people I follow on Twitter had much of interest to say about the Emmys. So
I'm surprised that Donald Trump wasn't all over it just for the fact that a Donald won something. But I guess it was a black Donald, so it's like, yeah, dude.
Doesn't count.
Dude,
doesn't count.
Like,
not in the club.
My shadow just won something, Oh, man. Who knew I could be good at racist jokes? So, I sure did.
I've been waiting for this from you for years,
I've
Chuck.
been waiting for racist jokes from you.
One of those it's like a cursed superpower where you're like, oh, I'm so great, but all my jokes are just racist, and I can't.
Yeah. It's one of those things you have remorse for, and you're like, I vow never to use my superpowers ever again. And then one day they're like, but the world needs you, sir. They need you right now. Right. They need this racism. So.
I met the devil at the crossroads, and I sold my soul to be funny. And it turns out that the only thing I can do is racist humor.
Yeah.
It's like being invisible, but only when no one's looking at you.
Right.
Oh, man, that's a deep cut. That's a, what the... Mystery Man?
Dude, seriously, that was
Damn,
deep.
Dude.
Super deep. Actually, I think that's going to be my new Twitter bio right there. I'm always invisible when no one's looking. So I actually did include a Twitter bio now. I'm sorry we're getting way off topic here, but I've got a Twitter bio, and it does have Boy Scouts in it. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the perfect lead-in to just say, follow us on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. Follow us on Twitter. I have changed my name to Baked Nebraska, but I'm still at...
Oh, that's so good. Oh, my God.
But I'm still at Shaggy2Trope. So...
Don't get confused.
Yeah, don't get it twisted. Brendan, where can they find you?
They can find me at Brendan Williams with 1 L.
And Matt, where are you at?
I'm at Matt the Great with a W. And also, y'all, follow us on Facebook.
YouTube,
like our page,
Twitter,
YouTube, whatever.
Follow us everywhere. You can find us at Liquid
We're literally
Flannel.
Everywhere.
Yeah, and I think we're pretty much the only Liquid Flannel. So when you Google us, we'll come up, whichever medium you want.
Oh yeah, have you guys done that lately? If you do it in like incognito mode, you Google us, we're the first result for Liquid Flannel. That phrase.
Yep.
Which means we've beaten out that recipe for a really shitty sounding
alcoholic beverage.
It just looks terrible.
Yeah.
It's like some cocoa or something.
I don't want to drink any
like
alcohol
cocoa.
that makes me think of the feeling fuzzy as I'm ingesting it,
Right.
I'm gonna drink a tall glass of flannel. So
there's another Liquid Flannel recipe from Chex.com. So my new
No, that's the thing. No, that's the recipe. The one that has the crumbled Chex on the rim of the glass.
It has to be Chex.
Gross.
If it's not Chex, it's not real.
What if it's Kicks?
It's not a real Liquid Flannel.
Right. Yeah, but you can find us on there. So just Google us, whichever social media outlet you want, we're there. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Bye. This has been an interesting high note session here. Is there a high note?
I mean,
Okay.
we talked about Philmont.
What's up? What were you guys saying there?
Trying to figure out if there was a high note at all here.
Yeah,
and Brendan was like, well, we talked about Philmont, and was like, okay, Mount Baldy is actually a high note in that discussion, but I don't think
I was going to say, elevation-wise, that's as high as you can get, But, yeah.
I'll take what I can get this week.